Hello to you all. I'm sitting here remembering the evenings 30 years ago. People filing into the living room, some familiar faces, some new faces. A big fire. Corey, part of the reason I love your fire there is we always had a fire burning in the fireplace. And Aaron would sit on his afo in front of the fire. So these stories originally were told around a fire. Since last month, you've all probably been on the same roller coaster I've been on, or perhaps trying to figure out how to get off, how to ground to yourself. So I've been talking to Aaron about this because I've been sometimes grounded, sometimes not at all grounded. And I think that's what he's going to be talking about tonight. That said, I'm just going to give you Aaron. So I'll be back. You will excuse us a moment. Barbara is trying to listen. I'm ushering her out. My blessings and love to you. I am Aaron. It's a joy to be with you tonight. I'm looking over Barbara's screen here just beyond outside on her deck, where she strung beautiful whiting colored lights today. Holiday. The season of light in many of your different spiritual traditions. A season of thanksgiving, of gratitude, of love. I've been talking some with Barbara and others of you about the idea of dreaming. In terms of dreaming, what do you dream of? What do you wish for? Wish to co-create? The Reverend Martin Luther King spoke in a renowned speech. I have a dream. What is your dream? There's a song from the show South Pacific. In this body, I do not have a singing voice, so pardon me. You've got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna make a dream come true? Anybody know that one? And then we have in Sound of Music. The dream that will need all the love you can give every day of your life for as long as you live. What is your dream? You really can't take the next step into a beautiful future, personally, as a country and as a world, until you know your dream and trust that dream. Many of you have dreams, but you also lack confidence in your ability personally, nationally, and universally to manifest that dream. We need then to ask two questions. What best supports the co-creation of the dreams, and what blocks it? I think the primary blockage is fear. Not just fear that you cannot thus manifest, but fear that you can. Fear of that power. And then you get caught in the lack of confidence. Well, this isn't my dream. Is it truly for the best? Let's take about 2 minutes to sit quietly and reflect. What are your highest dreams? Personally, for the small self, and for your world. What is it to which you most deeply aspire? I'll be quiet for 2 minutes. If we aspire to co-create. We need to share our dreams. So I'd like to hear from you. You can speak several sentences or just a word or two. What are your dreams? They may be personal dreams which mesh with the dreams for the world. They may be more universal dreams. What are your dreams? If we can think it, it's possible. So everybody help co-create this shift so that instead of my picture being framed, the speaker is framed. Just imagine that ability to be able to see at a glance, they're speaking. He is speaking. She is speaking. Oh, that is the highest good. Invite it without grasping. So we have shared our dreams, our visions. Thank you for bringing them out so all can partake of them. We then need to ask, is there anything that blocks the manifestation of these dreams? Barbara had an interesting meditation last week. It was very deep, profound in many ways. Meditating for over an hour, there was very much dissolution of the body and the ego. A sense of absence of conditioned objects. And then there was the reminder to herself, I choose to live on earth. And that means that I will rest in the spaciousness of the unconditioned and inviting the world of conditioned objects. Is there a preference for the unconditioned? That in some way I'm pushing away the conditioned, the whole conditioned realm that had seemed to fully dissolve. Objects, thoughts, sensations gone. But there was the brief reflection, if my intention is to help it bring forth an awakened fourth density positive polarity on earth, then I needed to remain in the world of the conditioned, at least in touch with it. So reflecting thusly, she said, I invite the conditioned realm. Now, she was in a place of just spaciousness and quiet, very little sense of anything arising or passing away. Deep stillness and the conscious thought, I invite the conditioned realm. The first thing she began to see was a rainbow. Color, the whole spectrum of visible color. Looking at this rainbow, she understood she was being invited to invite a color. Blue was her favorite color, so she thought, I invite blue. And immediately the space around her started to pick up myriad different blue hues, softer and brighter, darker and lighter. A whole realm of drifting blue color. And then there was a question that came to her, is blue enough? And she could see the rainbow playing in front of her. So she said, I invite red. And the red began first to fill the screen of her consciousness. Different tints of red. And then she thought to herself, I invite blue to remain here with the red. And there were areas of blue and red and purple in every different variation. She was in a place of great wonder, just watching, as you might watch a sunrise. And then I invite yellow. And the same thing passed. First, just different tints and hues of yellow. And then they began to merge with the red and blue until there was every color imaginable, just abstractly playing across the screen of her consciousness. And she felt enormous joy at this. Just saying, thank you for this beauty. The colors faded a bit into the background. And she understood she was being offered the opportunity to see what further she wished to invite. She thought to herself, I invite form to these colors. Still as abstract. The colors, instead of simply blending, began to pull together red areas and blue areas, yellow, purple, green, orange, and all the varieties of these, until it became a bit overwhelming. She saw herself, her consciousness pulling back, feeling overwhelmed. There was at first a subtle thought, I should be open to all of this. And then another subtle thought, why should I? So she stepped back. I was not guiding her, I wasn't talking to her through this. She stepped back and said, I invite that which is wholesome and which I can sustain and be fully present with without being overwhelmed. The scene softened a bit. The sharp object areas of color dissolved more into a mist. Colors moving and still. She saw that as soon as she tried to control it, It brought back a somebody, an ego, and then a distrust of that ego, knowing that she could not co-create from the ego self. So instead of falling back into that area of joyous invitation, I invite the colors that wish to come forth, to present for the highest good and harm to none. And she watched this magnificent sunrise for a while. She relaxed into the whole experience of inviting, holding in her heart and releasing, and inviting, holding in her heart and releasing, knowing that nothing was dying, it was simply going to where it would be unseen so that something else would come up close. She couldn't see what was behind it. It was all always there, just what was close to her. At that point, as she relaxed deeply into the meditation, I asked her what I've asked you today. What do you wish? What is it you dream of? Briefly, she contracted. A fear that if she chose this, it would do harm because of lack of that. So I suggested that she simply start with that which is for the highest good and harm to none. I invite it forth, holding that in her heart. That which is joyful, that which expands hearts and consciousness. For each, the images that might come forth would be different. For Barbara, almost immediately upon forming this wish, there was a great flow of water, a river and waterfalls, a scene with water coming off the mountains and pouring down into a vast lake. And she was filled with joy. The colors were vivid. It was filled with light. A few minutes into that scene, breaking into it, she began to see a small boat in the water. And there was a sudden shock. This boat could be swept under. The people in it could be killed. Diminish the flow of water. So she contracted a bit into the personal self, seeing the ways that her dream could create harm for others. I said, the water is not the problem. Your distrust of the boaters is the problem. Let them be in their boat if that is their dream, and hold the dream for themselves, that they could move with this flow of water with no harm. Can you trust them to do that? As soon as you contract, saying you could be hurt, they pick up that energy and freeze instead of paddling their boat. And then they can be harmed. Can you co-create with them the magnificent flow of water and safety so that all the boaters can come out and enjoy the movement, the waterfalls, the rapids, the depth of the water, the vast colors, with no harm? Why do you jump to the idea that because you have co-created this, others can be harmed by it? It pulled her out of the meditation to some degree. It took her a while to settle back in to that image of water flowing, river, waterfalls, beautiful colors, and then inviting that all who feel skilled, joyful, and capable to move in boats upon this water, free of harm. Please come out and play. In our meditation, she began to see kayaks and canoes, sailboats, and even swimmers frolicking, joyfully playing in the water. When you hold this intention to co-create for the highest good and invite others to come forth with their co-creation, that none will be harmed, that all will find joy and peace, awakening. You have the capability to co-create this. I pointed out to Barbara that when she froze up thinking somebody could be harmed, it was not a statement of her fear of wanting to harm another, not at all. But it was her fear of her power. If I have the power to co-create this stream, but maybe not to keep it within confines so it does no harm, I'm responsible. There is so much that you can co-create, all of you. And yet you must be responsible to that co-creation. A large part of that responsibility is trust of others to join you in the co-creation. I talked to Barbara about this after she came out of the meditation, and she said to me, what do I do about those who, instead of co-creating for the highest good, are co-creating from the ego space? I pointed out to her that if enough of you choose to co-create for the highest good and harm to none, it creates a force field of sorts, so that those who would break in and do harm can't really penetrate your creation. She said, is that not robbing people of their free will? People's free will ends where it harms others. But there needs to be a confidence. We choose to co-create this, all that you have described together, for the highest good of all beings and harm to none. And we are willing to stand behind this dream, not to enforce it by harming you, simply to trust the power of our love to be able to say, no, you may not break through here with harm. Many of you have co-created let me phrase it differently, are co-creating the wish for a world that is governed by mutual self-respect and love, not by ego and service to self. You are holding this vision so beautifully. But what do you do about those who are deeply service to self and disrespectful to others? I think this is the place where many of you are stuck, learning how to say no from a loving heart and to trust your power to say no. Because love truly is the strongest force in the world. I cannot break through that in violation of your free will, because the free will of service to self is very different than the free will of service to all beings. Service to self is small. It can be hard. It can kill. But it cannot open and shape a world or a universe. How do you nurture that deep intention of loving a service for the highest good of all beings? That transition into a higher density, a higher vibration where there is respect, love, peace, joy. One of the gifts of being together in this way with a spiritual community is the opportunity to explore how you co-create as a group. Imagine a group of people by the edge of a forest. They have just joyfully discovered how to make fire. They had seen fire before as a result of lightning, for example. But they did not know that there was any way to control that fire. Working together, rubbing sticks together, creating a spark, we can create fire. And there's joy. We will have light, heat, fire for cooking our food, warmth. Thank you. Thank you. One person grabs a burning stick out of the fire and says, I can use this to clear my land. I'm going off it to the land that I claim for mine, and I'm going to burn it down. Some of you might be startled, horrified. Grab at this person. No. That no is not the way to work with his free will decision. I want to burn off all the vegetation on my land so I can farm there, or for whatever reason. Imagine yourself then, instead of assaulting this person, gathering around this person in a circle, holding your arms in a loving circle. One of you then brings in a small plant. What he wants to farm. You bring it in and hold it, saying, here is lettuce. Here is green. Look at the preciousness of it. If this is what you wish to create, you cannot destroy it. The tree you would burn down is the elder brother of this green. You cannot destroy it. You can create land for farming. You can use the fire, in fact, as a way of clearing some of the land. But what you must do then is to go out to the land, and we'll go with you, and to ask what area chooses to be cleared so the green may be planted. And we all go watchfully to make sure the fire doesn't spread beyond that small area. So in a small way, we co-create, manifesting with loving respect for all that is. Respecting the free will of all that is. And the one who wanted to burn down a vast tract of land begins to understand. This is a hypothetical discussion because none of you are going to be burning off land and are meeting people who, few of you will be meeting people who are going to burn off land to clear it for farm, to destroy anything for their own personal gain. So consider this simply a template. The work, the place you are at now, is the need to go out and hear those who say, I need this, I want that, from the ego place, and to listen to the fear that their needs won't be met, to listen to the pain, the old hysterical pain of their needs not being met, to begin through this beautiful land of yours to hear each other. And then you can say to the one who sees things differently, what is your dream? And to listen. And share your dream. What is my dream? And ask them to listen. Did you hear what I said? Tell me what you heard me say. Invite, not insist. Share what you heard them say and then invite them to repeat what they heard you say. And then the next step, how can we come together to make sure both of these dreams are realized? So that all beings feel safe and loved. This is where your higher consciousness is bringing you. Those who have not yet moved into a higher consciousness are capable of it. Don't give up hope. Perhaps not all are capable in this lifetime. Some are. How does it feel to keep yourself open and co-creating? I would like to invite you, and this is unfortunately not something you can do live right now, but perhaps you have an acquaintance who sees the world differently than you. Invite them, tell them that you were listening to a guided meditation and were moved by it. Do they have half an hour to explore it with you? Don't talk politics. Don't talk finances. Don't talk religion or sports teams. Invite them to reflect. If you could paint the world one color, what color would it be? You would paint it purple, lavender. I would paint it pinks, beige, red, and gold. Let's think of what it would look like if it were a mixture of both these colors. How beautiful it could be. Just spending 5 or 10 minutes on this kind of vision. Then a next kind of question, next level of question. One, for example, that comes to my mind is, how would people who have lost all their money because of the pandemic, lost their businesses, how can we take care of them? If the reaction is, I'm not going to take care of them, I need it for myself. Okay, I hear your discomfort that if you have to give to another, it will take away from you. But if you felt like you had plenty for yourself, how would you want to take care of others? You just keep building in this way. Listening, sharing, hearing. Finding the place where you come together, where your dreams can mesh. What a joy to co-create this possible future together. With loving kindness, mutual respect, and deep hearing. People are not always going to be able to hear you. Perhaps part of your fear of not being heard is not fully hearing yourself. It's okay that there is an ego self and that it has needs. If your heart says in this moment, my needs may not be met, I'm afraid. Instead of saying, get out of here, how about, breathing in, I feel fear. I am aware of the fear. I hold space for the fear and compassion for this human who is afraid. How can you have compassion for others' fear if you cannot have compassion for your own fear? In my many lives, of course, I did not know what was happening all over the world. I didn't even know there was an other side of the world. But in my local world, I certainly experienced severe epidemics, famine and drought, great numbers of the population dying of starvation, of illness. You are not the first people in the world to experience this. It's just that you have awareness that it's covering the whole world. But the world has been through this before. And each time there's been perhaps a little bit of learning from those who were willing to take risks, to take care of others, to make sure that all were fed, that all were warm, had clean water. Now it's no longer just your family or your tribe. The whole earth and all its peoples, all its animals, everyone is your tribe. And this provides you with an amazing opportunity as you move toward this transition into higher consciousness. But it cannot happen if you push others, only if you hold your hands out and invite and hear and welcome. You are ready, my friends, or you would not be here where you are right now. You are ready. You shared your dreams before, and they are beautiful dreams. What blocks the co-creation of those dreams for you personally? And what do you think would block it for the whole earth? Again, an opportunity to share. I hear you say fear of opposition, and this is probably true for many of you. But what is the fear of opposition? Thank you. That's very clear. And then you pull back. Instead of choosing to co-create, there's the idea it might be negative, so I don't dare risk it. But think about the enormous risk of not taking a risk. Again, not just to you, but to all of you. What are you afraid of? Are you not afraid of others' negative response? Or perhaps are you afraid of the force of your own ego coming back in reaction to that negative response? So again, thank you. It comes down to the tricks the ego self plays. And the ego only has power here when you give it power through some degree of fear or contempt of the ego, rather than embracing the ego, the one who is afraid, the one who wants to be loved, the one who wants to be included, the one who wants to be sure he or she does not act out of fear, anger, or negativity. Can you have compassion for that aspect of your being? It is in this way that you disempower it and give the power to the whole self, which is so deeply connected to everything else, that the love is communicated, albeit sometimes very slowly, because that love can only be deeply taken in by another in the same place. And if the other people are caught in their small ego selves, they may not be able to hear you. It takes enormous patience. All of you know Yeshua's story of his life. There were some people who deeply embraced him with great joy to what he taught. Do not think that the majority embraced him. The majority opposed him. Think of the scene you have read, perhaps in the Bible or heard of, where it was asked, who shall I free? This man, Yeshua Barabbas. And the crowd shouted, Barabbas. They opposed him. He knew he was here to teach love and not to win a popularity contest. The ego wants to win the popularity contest. It's understandable. Have compassion for the ego. Don't hate the ego, but know it as ego. Your yellow is not going to overwhelm their red or blue, but to create a magnificent landscape of colors. But if you deprive the world of your yellow, what a barren world it would be with only red and blue. If you have a group of children, one is afraid and angry, or if you are, and you try to force them to join in your game or co-created painting, there will be resistance and anger. If you would judge them, it will heighten the resistance and anger. If you simply play, turn to them occasionally throughout the playtime and say, would you like to join? No? Okay. Go back to what you're doing. 10 minutes later, there's time now where others can join who have not yet participated. Would anybody like to join? Your happiness, your joy, your connection will invite those who are ready. There will be those who say, I'm unworthy. If I try to join, they'll reject me. But if you're patient with them, eventually they will come forth. Here's a funny story about Barbara. It may be hard for you to believe this story. She was 9 or 10 years old. She rode her bike to the schoolyard to play on the swings. There was a boys' side to the playground and a girls' side in those days. The girls' side had what they called a maypole with ropes around a pole that you could swing around. And the boys' side had swings. And during the school day, the girls were not permitted on the boys' side. She wanted to swing. So she rode her bike to the playground. There were a few children, some boys playing ball, I think. She simply rode her bicycle up to where the swings were and started to swing. When a boy, maybe Barbara was a 4th grader, and this boy was a 5th or 6th grader. In those days, 6th grade, elementary through 6th grade. He came up to her and said, you're not allowed to swing there. That's only for boys. She said, It's not a school day. I can swing if I want. No, you can't. And he tried to pull her off the swing. She became enraged. She got into a fist fight with him. They gave each other bloody noses. He eventually, because he was older and bigger, pinned her to the ground. He said, "Do you give up?" She said, "Well, you have me pinned to the ground, but when you let me go, I'm going to swing again." She got up, she climbed back on the swing, he grabbed her off, hit her again, pinned her to the ground, and said, and she hit him as well. He had a bloody nose and a black eye. He said, "Are you ready to go away from the swing?" She said, "No. When you let go, I'm going to swing again." He looked at her and said, "What am I going to do with you?" She said, "Well, you could just let me swing. Go back to playing ball." He laughed and did exactly that. He went back to playing ball. And actually, they became very good friends. Just a little story. 10-year-old Barbara. When Emmanuel was a baby, maybe a 2-year-old. I'm sure you watched him sometime in trying to build with blocks. He would put a block on and another block, 5 or 6 blocks, and it crashed down. You might tell him, "This is nothing balance," and try to explain balance to him. He might listen, he might have listened to you, but then he started building again, and it wasn't imbalanced and it crashed down. And he may have yelled and cried in frustration, but he had to experiment with imbalance before he was ready to understand balance. And you remember that? And you remember him doing that? So when you look at somebody who seems to make choices out of ignorance and unwillingness to learn, try to understand that they are doing the best they can, and that what they need most is your patience and your willingness to come forth when they're ready. When they say, "Please show me how this works." And that until then, they're not going to be ready. But if you keep demonstrating what it looks like to be ready, including to say, "I don't know how this works, and it's a little scary for me to try it, but I think I could try it." As you demonstrate in that way for others, being willing to take one step ahead, then those who are reluctant can learn. You can never force them. Think of this as your opportunity to learn patience. I would guess that when you were younger, more of your visions were also coming from the ego self. Now, as they come increasingly from the larger self, 2 things. There's more opportunity to help them manifest and to co-create with others who are also co-creating from that place beyond the small self. But in doing so, you begin to recognize the power that the ego self doesn't have. The ego self can push for what it wants because it doesn't have much power. When you come into this true self and realize how powerful you are, and especially in co-creation with others, then the ego self steps back in with its voice saying, "Do I really have it right? What if I make a mistake here? What if I do harm?" So this takes practice to watch how this small self comes up in your meditation practice. And just sit it there and serve a tea. Embrace it. The small child. Love her. And help her to know that she is only a small part of the totality of what you are, and that the totality is connected to all that is and grounded in love, and that it can be trusted. This is one of the places where it's so helpful to have a spiritual community as that, with others that you can bounce off your intentions and aspirations. What do you think about this? I'm a little concerned that this is more my ego. How do you hear it? Sharing with trusted friends. And it can be very helpful to have a friend tell you, no, it feels clear to me. Or the occasional, maybe you ought to look deeper at your ego and see if there's some fear here that's pushing us. That way we can listen to others and to our own hearts. Just because another says it's clear or not clear does not make it so. It simply gives you some place to further reflect on what the reality is. That's an honest fear, and I think it's one that others share. Two things here. It's okay sometimes to be the weird guy. And when you come together in a community like this, where there are a lot of weird guys, you can be at home knowing that nobody is going to point a finger at you because they're part of what you are. That is, the ones who think a bit differently than do the majority of people in the world. So in a cycle like this, there's the opportunity to cease to see yourself as the weird guy and simply to see yourself as someone who has a different perspective, which is not bad at all. It takes addressing the old pain, not just of this, but of past lives. You don't have to see those past lives, only to know that deep pain of not being a part of the group, not feeling accepted, seeing things differently. And that sometimes it led to danger to be that way. And then compassion for the self instead of judgment for it. This self, who is the quote weird guy, is the self that's going to be able to bring the world through into a higher consciousness. Because it's a bit weird in terms of most humans to be of a higher consciousness. Weird and wonderful. I think you are right in what you observe, and yet it need not to be so. The world is shifting into a place where it is not so. Remember the example of the small child building with blocks who insists on piling them off at balance because it needs to see them topple 100 times before it's willing to concede, if I do it that way, we'll topple. It's testing the limits. In some ways, those who are caught in a third density consciousness are also continuing to test the limits. Some fear of stepping up into a higher consciousness. What will be asked of me if I recognize that I am this higher consciousness rather than clinging into the old? As with a loving parent, it takes patience and persistence. You just keep offering the example of more compassion and wisdom until people are willing to pick it up. Eventually, they will do so. People have been talking a lot about the election, and I've heard many people say, how can there be 47, 48, 49% or whatever who voted for Trump? Let us ask instead, how can there be 51% who did not vote for Trump? Isn't that wonderful? Now, for some of you, if there's anybody there who voted for Trump, I am not diminishing your views. I'm simply stating, in this situation, there was a majority who voted for a candidate who was respectful. Whatever you think of his policies, he is respectful and not ego-centered. Isn't it wonderful that today in the world, in your country, there were a majority of people who were able to vote for a candidate who is not ego-centered, who is respectful, kind, and patient. That's something big. Consider that. Corey, I noticed the miracle of that fire behind you. You never have to put on new logs. That's something to go create. Yes, this is like, this is the next step. Not only what blocks, but what supports. We do need to look at what blocks, but not to fix what blocks. Rather, to begin finally to be able to say thank you to what blocks. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher. And that open heart, that cherishing of everything, including the self, brings us back to the power that we have to co-create for the highest good. And to trust others also to do so, to come together with us to do so. What supports ultimately for me is the awakened heart, joy and gratitude, respect, laughter, sunshine, remembering of the vision. All of this supports. And it's so right there and tangible. But you forget it. Passing this to others, let's change the question now from what blocks to what supports it for you. And here, of course, we come back to the triple gem of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, the awakened one. And the truth, the deepest truth of the teachings and practice, and the community that comes together to practice. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for your loving energy and your hard practice to awaken into the fullness of that which you are. Next week, you celebrate Thanksgiving. And this has always seemed odd to me that one day be given to Thanksgiving. So perhaps you can celebrate the whole next week or month or year, giving thanks for the opportunity you have been given to co-create a new world and a new universe of awakened consciousness. May all beings be free of suffering. Be happy. and have peace. Let us co-create this together, free of self-judgment, free of judgment, free of fear. But when these arise, let presence simply note them and sit them by the fire and serve them tea. I love you all very much. My blessings and love to you all. Thank you for your deep practice and love. Know that I love you, and that there are so many angels here tonight, so many loving presences who are walking this path with you, perhaps invisible, but not unavailable. We're here to help. I'll release the body to Barbara. Thank you, Eric. Okay, I see it's 9:02. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us tonight. Much love to you all. I'll say good night.